Theme of today's show might just be deflating. Deflating. 7 for Montreal, 5 for the Sabres. After a 3-game win streak, the Sabres lose to the last place team in the NHL. What went wrong? We'll talk about it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, and thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase coming to you after a Monday afternoon game, Sabres and Canadiens. I was in the arena for this one. I've got a lot of thoughts. It was a dreadful afternoon for the Sabres and for Sabre fans who, if you went to the game like me, you were met with thousands upon thousands of Canadiens fans. You had a game that went the way it did, and then you left in the pouring rain. It was like, are you kidding? It was nice going in, and then you leave the doors going out, and it's just pouring rain, especially for me, who had parked a 5-minute walk away. It's like, sweet, I'm gonna get drenched here. Not a great afternoon for Sabre fans, to say the least. What went wrong? How did they give up 7? How did they get 5 without getting much in terms of opportunities in this game? There was just a weird hockey game. So all that coming up today on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sneaky Joe DiBiase. If you want to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, which we were texting back and forth with during the game today, you can sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. You sign up there, and then you're just texting back and forth from there on out. Looking through some of the texts, a lot of the same stuff. We were talking about Dahlin and the penalty he took in the third period, not being very disciplined. Here's a good question, because I actually didn't have this written down on my list of things to get to, and there was a lot from this game. One texter asked, why is Quinn having so much trouble skating this year? He falls more than I do in beer league. He's probably right. Jack Quinn, on a power play in this game, falls on his right. It looks like he's never skated before on this fall. He just falls, loses an edge. There was another one later in the game where Quinn almost went down again the exact same way, but he caught himself. But it was one of those where, he's like stumbling around and it looks like he's about to fall, but he catches himself, but it doesn't look very smooth whatsoever. So Quinn and his skating, man, something is going on there, because now he's falling like he was playing in Pee Wee. And I know the injury, but man, could that really be all it is? Maybe it is. Maybe that is all it is. But there's a lot of other stuff to get to in today's game. Listen, I thought this was going to be a happy show. I thought, hey, they're going into the third period. They're up by a goal. At least this was, with a couple of minutes left to go in the second period. They're up by a goal. And, all right. They're up 3-2, and there's really not a lot of action in this game. There were no shots on goal. I mean, the Sabres had 11 shots on goal through 2 periods of hockey in this one, which might have been one of the biggest sins of the afternoon, because Caden Primo, the Canadiens goaltender, was pretty dreadful. He allowed, if you look at the final numbers for him individually, on the day, he allowed 5 goals on 14 shots. It's a .643 save percentage on the afternoon. How does that guy play 43 minutes and you only put 14 shots on him? Might be a good question for the Sabres in this one. How come he wasn't pulled a little bit earlier? Not a lot of action. Listen, the theme of this game was the goaltending was horrendous on both sides. No goal. All 4 goalies played in this game. And the only one that you could even argue played well was Sam Montembeault. And Sam Montembeault only saw 4 shots. How about that, by the way? You got a goalie that is very good. Montembeault has had a great start to the season. He's coming in cold in the middle of the third period. And you're down for much of that time. And in those 16 minutes, the Sabres put 4 shots on him. That was it. 4 shots on Montembeault. Pretty bad job Pretty bad job, I would say, overall offensive execution in this game by the Buffalo Sabres. There's not a lot of positive feelings. And again, like, they scored. They got 5 goals, but it was thanks in large part to the team on the other side kind of letting that happen. Montreal was a bad team. Listen, big picture from this game, Montreal was last in the NHL going into Monday afternoon. And we hadn't done a show since Saturday's game against Calgary. We were feeling good. Listen, like, I know Saturday was a little bit of, they had a 2-0 lead in the first period, and they really just hung on all the way through. They didn't look very good in the second or the third period. They found their way to killing off an overtime penalty, which is not easy, a 4-on-3. They got to the shootout, and they got a goal, and they got a couple of saves. Bam, you get a win. That's a good job. It's a good job, even when you're not playing your best, and I do not think the Sabres played their best on Saturday against Calgary, to find a way to win that hockey game and get to a 3-game win streak, especially when, hey, Montreal coming up, St. Louis isn't that great, Philly's bad, the Ducks are bad, the Sharks are bad. You got a lot of bad teams coming up on your schedule. Time for a run. And to drop your first one of those at home to the worst team in hockey is just a really deflating feeling. And again, it was compounded by the fact that it was pouring rain outside after. And also before that, I would guess I was in the arena for this game, and I was sitting next to, I think there were probably 4 Montreal fans to my right. The stands behind the goal where Montreal was shooting twice, there were so many Montreal fans in that area. That one section, 4 sections, was a sea of red. And best guess of the announced 15,687 fans in attendance in this game, I might want to bet like 4,000 at least were Montreal fans in this one. Which, hey, that's not that surprising. The Montreal fans are a good traveling fan base. They always have been. And even when their team is bad, they have been. Lot that went wrong. We'll go through the goal breakdowns of this game. I got some quick thoughts on almost every Montreal goal that went in on the Sabres in this one. We'll look ahead to what's coming up as well. Some of the stats of the game, we'll get that to you here as the Sabres lose 7-5 to Montreal. Shots in this game ended up 23-18. I'm going to look up. I tried to find this before the show. I might have to do a deeper dive to find it. Might take some work. I don't know. I want to bet that in this game that had 41 shots, that you haven't seen a game with 41 or fewer shots have 12 combined goals in a very long time. I bet it's very rare, the type of game that we saw today, where there were so few chances and so many goals at the same time. Some of the other numbers, Sabres out hit Montreal 23-16. Faceoffs in this game, 40-26 in favor of the Sabres. They've been very good on faceoffs as of late. And I'm burying the lead here from kind of the outside of the X's and O's, what happened in the game type of stuff. Burying the lead in a negative sense in that the Sabres had 2 injuries in this game, and one of which is very, very important to watch. One is Mattias Samuelsson. Samuelsson went down awkwardly. He left the game in the second period. He did come back, not on the ice though, or not to play, but he came back on the bench, waited for a whistle, and then he skated around during a commercial break. Was watching him do it. And he shook his head. He's like, I can't do it. Something was off with Samuelsson. And listen, this is a part of his story. Beyond how mad we are at the contract right now, beyond his struggles this year, historically, Mattias Samuelsson has been very injury prone. So not that surprising that he's again dealing with an injury here. Hope that it's not bad, but we'll see. The other injury that is much more critical to the Sabres' success, in my opinion, and everybody's opinion, Tage Thompson left the game after 1 shift in the second period, and he did not return. And Lindy Ruff did not have an update yet on either player after the game, which makes some sense. He'd only, he did the media like a couple minutes after the game ended, didn't have an update yet. So we got to watch out for that, because the impact of Tage Thompson being injured could be really bad to the Buffalo Sabres going forward. There is no doubt, in my opinion, more than Dahlin, who has not been his best this year, who plays a position where they have Owen Power behind him, who I think's had a really good start to the year. Bo Byram, who I think's been better than people think to start the year. Those are two players that if Dahlin ever went down, I feel could step in Dahlin's role as the number one power play defenseman, as the number one minute eater, as the kind of the guy at the blue line that you're asking to carry the most offensively. I think Power and Byram can manage that role, and they could do fine in that role. Not as good as Dahlin, but I think they could do well in that role. There is nobody, in my opinion, that is ready to play Tage Thompson's role. There is nobody on this roster that I think is capable right now of stepping in to Tage Thompson's spot and doing half as well as he has on the season. This is where they are at center. We've been searching for why isn't Dylan Cozens been better as their second line center this year. To now be asking somebody to step up and be the number one center if Thompson's going to miss time is very bad. It's the worst injury they could have. And you have to hope he's not out, because when he left second and third period, they put Dylan Cozens up. He was playing that role, number one center. He was playing with JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn. They put the kid line back together. They bumped Krebs up the lineup a little bit. They left McLeod and his line with Greenway and Zucker, which I would have done too. They bumped Krebs up to play with Tuck a little bit, and they were mixing things up. Everybody was kind of playing with everybody because they were one forward short. They had an odd number of forwards. And I just don't think you have an answer. I don't think there's anything you could do the best you can. The best you could do is you bump Cozens up, you bump McLeod up, you bump Krebs into a third line center role, and you hope for the best. Or you could get real wild and try Yuri Kulik as a top six center. You could try to call up Konsta Hellenis, the Sabres first round pick from this past draft, is on a 3-game goal streak in Rochester and has been really good down there to start. But man, that shouldn't be the answer. And I don't know how likely you are to succeed anyway by calling up some kid and asking him to fill in for your 50-goal scorer who just left. And Thompson scored again in this game. He continues to rack up the goals, 11 goals on the year. He's one of the top goal scorers in the league so far this season. To lose him will be horrific. And I mentioned with Samuelsson. Samuelsson's been injury prone. You don't want that to start to become a thing with Tage either. Tage, they can't afford him to be injury prone, man. Samuelsson, it sucks because he's under contract for so long. But Samuelsson has not been good for over a year now. Tage, you saw it last year. You saw what he looked like when he was trying to play through injury. He's still a usable player, still a 30-goal scorer, but he's just not the superstar center that he's capable of being when he's playing hurt. And this will now be 3 years in a row that he'll have dealt with an injury. Because 2 years ago when he scored 47, remember, he would have got to 50. But late in that year, he had a bunch of injuries, and the Sabres actually even moved him to the wing. Remember that? Late in the 22-23 season, Middlestat was their leading scorer over the last month of the year because they had moved Thompson to wing because he wasn't healthy enough to play that number one center role. Last year, we know he missed a month and then rushed back because the team was falling apart, and Tage had that pressure on his shoulders and felt like he had to save the day. So he came back early, and he was dealing with injury the whole year. Thompson, man, I'm just fingers are crossed that that's not something there because they can't afford him to be injury prone, and they can't afford for him to be injured right now. When we come back, I got some thoughts on almost every Montreal goal. What went wrong? There were a bunch of things that went wrong in this game, and goaltending did not help the Sabres out either, as they gave up 7. One empty netter, but 6 before that, to Montreal. Montreal, the worst team in the league, comes into your building with their fans, and they scored 7 goals. We'll talk about what went wrong on those goals when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. You got to check out PrizePicks right now with everything going on, whether it's the NHL, it's football, it's got college football going on as well. PrizePicks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money. PrizePicks, the only real money daily fantasy platform that has injury insurance. So when your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks, best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. They invented the flex play, which means you could still hit cash out of your lineup even if it isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today, join, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go to PrizePicks, download the app today, use code LOCKEDONNHL, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Go to PrizePicks.com or download the PrizePicks app, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for PrizePicks. Run your game. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Montreal 7, Buffalo 5. The Sabres fall to 7-8-1 on the season. They had an opportunity. If they had won this game, they would have been in a playoff spot for the time being. But alas, they will not spend today in a playoff spot. Let's go through some of the goals of this game and what went wrong. 7 of them. 7th was an empty netter, so we don't have to go into that one too much. A lot of different things. A lot of different things went wrong. A lot of mental breakdowns. A lot of dumb plays, again, by the Sabres. 1-0 Montreal. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. Check out the highlight reel. You can go to the Sabres YouTube page. You want to follow along these goals on some of this film breakdown that we do here for you. The 1-0 Josh Anderson goal at the 4:14 mark of the first period. Josh Anderson, his 3rd of the year. This play is just forwards. It's kind of bad circumstance, but also it's forwards not doing well to cover up for the defenseman. And it's forwards that typically have been good at this, I would say. But in this one instance, it's just tough when you have 2 forwards being asked to cover for defensemen because both Jacob Bryson and Owen Power pinch. Now, on different sides, they both pinch at different times, and both guys do have a good shot at getting the 50-50 puck. So what happens then is because Bryson is pinched, and now Power is pinched, and Bryson's not back yet. When Montreal gets the puck out of their own end, there are 2 Sabre forwards back, Jason Zucker and Ryan McLeod. And this is just where their natural tendencies, their natural instincts as forwards doesn't allow them to be in the good position here, the right position, because they are way too far apart. And Zucker doesn't have urgency to get to the right spot because his mind is a little slower to get to the right spot because he's not a defenseman. So what ends up happening is Montreal sees this. Christian Dvorak sees this. Oh, these 2 Sabres back here, I mean, they're a mile apart. There is an ocean between Bryson Zucker and McLeod that Josh Anderson just has to walk through. I mean, you could drive a truck through that hole if you wanted. And he walks in on a breakaway and he beats Luukkonen. That one is just, hey, you need somebody to recognize I'm covering for the defenseman. I need to be in the right position. Or you need one of your defensemen to maybe Power in this instance to go. It's a tough one. I don't know if you want Power passing on a 50-50 puck that I think he had a very good shot at getting to, but maybe you do. Maybe you say, hey, Owen, your partner's already up. You got 50-50 puck, not good enough. You got to step back. You got to fly back. That was the goal that made it 1-0. Sabres game responded every time. Like the Sabres scored 30 seconds after Anderson makes it 1-0. Let's jump forward though to the second period. And there's not a lot here. This is a power play goal by Montreal. Cole Caulfield's 11th of the year. He's been great too, goal scoring wise. I think I just need a save here. It's not everybody can be covered. It's a power play. And I've got Caulfield on the side of the net. And he gets a good deflection on it, but he's still at a bad angle. And Luukkonen is there. Luukkonen gets across. Like, he's not late. He's just not square. He's not in the right technical position, and he's leaky. And he's got a hole under his arm, which Caulfield deflects it through, and he gets it by Luukkonen. I think that's one where I would just want to save. Like, it's not an easy save. It's not horrific that he gave it up. But if you're quick enough to be square with the shooter and you're not, then I think that's one where I want the goaltender to kind of make a save for me. So that's where I'd put a lot of the blame on the 2-1 Montreal goal. Sabres then score 2. Cousins and Krebs, the place is loud. These are both like within a minute and a half after the Caulfield goal. So now this is really the most critical spot of the game, the most critical minute of the game. The Sabres have a minute left in the second period, up 3-2. And there are 2 different mistakes on the 2 goals, and they're they're maybe equally egregious. One of them is a mental error and one of them is an effort error. Let's start with the 3-3 goal. The Sabres have an odd man rush. 4-on-3. They have got a 4-on-3 breaking out. Clifton has shot to the net. Krebs has got the puck on the left wall, entering the zone. Clifton pushes the defenseman back. So now he's got the third Canadian player attacking him. That player is taking away his pass lane to the middle of the ice. That Canadian player, I bet you, if you got them in an honest moment, would tell you, I think it was Kirby Dach. I bet you Dach does not know that Sam Lafferty is trailing as the fourth Sabre. I think the way Dach is playing this play defensively, all he's doing is covering the Zach Benson pass. That's it. Benson is in the middle of the ice, a little bit further down, but ahead of those defensemen. And I think Dach only knows Benson's there. So he's just taking that passing lane away as best he can. Which means what Krebs has to do here, this is what separates him from this is what the difference between the player he is and the player that was hyped up when he was drafted. The player that was hyped up, the potential that was hyped up when he was traded to the Sabres is the Golden Knights' #1 prospect. The hype on Krebs before he entered the NHL on a regular basis was this dude is going to be a fantastic playmaker in the NHL. You're going to see 40, 50 assist seasons from him. This is the difference between hype and reality. This play is an example of why he is not that player. Because this is a play where you have to make the right read. You're a passer. You need to know where to pass the puck. And you need to make those decisions way more times than not. You need to make this pass right 99 times out of 100. The pass is easy. Simple. It's a better decision. It's got to go out in front of Sam Lafferty. It can't go to Benson because it can hit a leg and then you're back the other direction, which is what happens. Put this puck to the trailer, the guy at the furthest back, but he's in the zone because then Sam Lafferty has all the space in the world to walk into. Instead, even if he gets the pass through to Benson, Benson's got less space. Never should this pass go to Benson. It should always go to Lafferty. And I will say on this play, I'm pretty sure, I don't want to 100% accuse Krebs of the wrong decision here because I'm only like 90% sure. But from my vantage point, I've watched the playback a couple of times trying to figure out what was he going for here. And my take is he was going for Zach Benson up the middle of the ice, not for Sam Lafferty. The pass was too soft, I think, to be going all the way over to Lafferty. So Krebs makes the mistake. It's back the other direction. Montreal executes the 3-on-2 effortlessly, and it's in the back of the net. It's just a turnover by Krebs that ends up in the back of their net. You could argue the next goal is more egregious. The 4-3 goal by Montreal. This is just a quitting play. This is a lazy goal given up by the Buffalo Sabres. A lazy goal. And Cousins made a comment tonight that makes me think about this goal a lot. Cousins said, I don't think we entered the game with the right mentality, and maybe we thought the game was going to be easy. How about that? What a joke. What a joke if this team... I don't try to get on players for what they say like that in postgame, because to me, I think Cousins is trying to get through. He's trying to explain a 400th loss on the hockey team, He's just trying every other night, he's got to go up to the podium or he's got to go up in front of the media. He's got to explain why they lost. And they're never going to say it was their talent. So he's got to come up with something. And sometimes you come up with the wrong thing. But if he's right, so that's why I don't want to indict him fully. I think maybe he's just trying to get through it. He's trying to explain it some way because everything's different. If that's true, what a joke. And this goal would have been representative of that. Because this goal, Cousins loses the board battle in the offensive zone. It's what happens after. Alex Tuch and Rasmus Dahlin, two of your leaders, two of you guys that wear a letter on this team, are too far forward. And not for any really good reason. The play is not really a high percentage play. They're both too far forward. The play gets behind them. Now, Power has the puck. He loses to Yaroslavkovsky, the top pick from a couple years ago. And you could say it was a penalty. I had a couple of texters tell me it was a penalty. I don't think it was a penalty. I think he goes down a little easy there. And I would not expect that call to be made 9 times out of 10. I don't think you can expect that call. I think Power, listen, you're 6'4", You're 6'3". Wait, he's bigger than that, 6'5". You can't go down that easily. I know Slafkovsky's a big guy, but you can't go down that easily if you're Owen Power, because you lose that battle now it's a mini 2-on-1. And the most egregious play to me of all of it, the whole sequence, this is the laziest part of it. Dahlin. Dahlin is back. Dahlin is in good position. Dahlin is not covering Nick Suzuki, arguably the best offensive player on Montreal. He's just standing there. Dahlin has nobody else to cover. They acted like the period was about to end. And there were 30 seconds left, but there weren't 2 seconds left. And you play to the whistle. You play to the end of the period. They played that shift like the period was about to end. Let's just get to intermission. And Dahlin is the most at I would say, on the hook for that, because he is standing in front of the net, almost half screening Luukkonen. And Suzuki, I mean, he's got all the space in the world. Dahlin reaches for it. The pass is extended from him. And even Luukkonen should probably have made the save here. It wasn't a great shot. But Dahlin and Power, those are your best 2 defensemen. Your 2 number 1 overall pick defensemen that just got worked by Juraj Slafkovsky and Nick Suzuki. That should never happen. It's why, part of the reason why, they are what they are. Your most 2 important players, your 2 highest drafted players, that shouldn't be happening to them. And that's how the Sabres trailed going into the third period. And then finally, the one other goal I want to talk on real quick on Dahlin again. I was not happy with Dahlin this game. He had a big slap shot goal. That was nice. I think shift to shift, he wasn't that bad, but it's these couple critical moments. It's that goal, and it's that play on the Suzuki goal. And then he takes an undisciplined penalty. You're tied. You're halfway through the third with a bad team. And Dahlin gets running around before he takes the penalty. He was in a scuffle in the offensive zone. He got into it with a player on Montreal side. And I think Dahlin, who plays on raw emotion, and sometimes he lets that get the better of him. You're the captain. You can't let that get the better of you. He did. And he takes an elbowing penalty. Undisciplined. Takes an elbowing penalty. Maybe in part because he was running around hot, because he got into it with somebody right before. And what happens? Montreal scores a goal, and you're never looking back. They win the hockey game. So I think the Sabres need more from their captain on this night. You need that one mental error to not happen against Nick Suzuki at the end of the second period, and you need your captain to not take undisciplined penalties in the third period of hockey games that are still in play. That happened 2 weeks ago against Florida also, by the way. He takes an undisciplined, smack, stick to the face penalty, and the game is over from there on. That game wasn't over yet either. You need Dahlin to keep it under control a little bit more, especially if he's going to wear that C. Timeout here. When we come back, we'll look ahead a little bit. And also, what do we think is going to happen with the goaltending? We had an update on Luukkonen that was a little weird from Lindy Ruff tonight. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast brought to you by Gametime. I went to this game today, and we were looking at the Gametime app all morning. There were great deals. I ran into somebody in the atrium in front of the arena before going in, and he's like, "Oh, you recognize me? Love the show." And mentioned how, I sit in the arena. I'm waiting till face-off. I'm waiting till I see how low tickets go right before. That's a move. You could do that. I used to do that with Bills games back in the day, where you just wait until right in face-off. I'll hang out here. If not, maybe I'll head over to the bar if nothing comes my way that I like. But you get those deals right up against the game. And Gametime has last-minute ticket deals available to you right up till face-off, sometimes even after face-off. So check it out. They've also got this new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. It's not just sports. You got concerts and plenty others as well. Use the app. They've got a view of your seats before you buy them, so you know exactly what you're going to be looking for. The angle, is it going to be obstructed at all? What's the glass look like here? Because sometimes that can be distorted. All available to you on the Gametime app. So check out Gametime and Gametime Picks, all those deals as well. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase covered, the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. A little bit of a weird update for you, and then a look ahead to what's coming up this week for the Sabres on the schedule. They fall 7-5 to Montreal. I mentioned I didn't like the Cousins quote. Any notion at all about, we took this game lightly. No, we thought this could be an easy game. What a joke. I know that Chad DeDominis has had this take too, so I'm half stealing from him, but I loved it. Who are you, even if you haven't been here for the whole 13 years of this playoff drought, who do you think you are to take anybody lightly? To take anybody too easily? You're the Buffalo Sabres. Dylan Cousins has been here long enough. Again, I don't want to crush him too much because I don't even know. I don't really know if he fully believes it. If he's just talking to talk because he's out of answers. Dylan Cousins has been here long enough. Dylan Cousins has been here since 2020. This is year 5 for him, okay? It's a third of the drought. It's a good chunk of it. It's 300 games, okay, for Dylan Cousins. You don't take anybody lightly. Look at the logo on your crest. Look where you play. You don't look how many match away fans are in the crowd. This thing's been going on for half your life, this playoff drought. You're a Buffalo Sabre. You don't take anybody lightly. What a joke, if that were to be true. Again, I don't really even believe it is. All right. So not fully criticizing Cousins, because I think he was just talking. I need that to be said like 5 times to make sure. The other thing that was weird, Lindy talking about his goaltending. So he pulls Luukkonen after the second intermission. Levi comes out to start the third. And I did wonder at the end of the second, like, all right, 4 goals in 2 periods. He's got a 6-goal pace here. I wonder if he could switch to Levi here. And he does. And I thought, okay, that was just he didn't like Levi's game. Levi had, I thought, 2 goals that he probably should have stopped. The other 2, I don't think were really his fault. And then Lindy says post-game, it was his decision. Luukkonen had a little bit of an ailment yesterday and thought maybe it was bothering him and affected his play. That is a little weird to me because Luukkonen's been playing a lot lately. And maybe this would have been a good opportunity to get him a rest in the first place. If in addition to that, he had an ailment that he was laboring with and you still played him, that was weird to me. That was very, very weird to me that you would have ever put him in there in the first place. So that's one thing that was a little weird. Lindy also said on the coach's challenge, which I was confused by the rule. I guess I don't know this rule 100%, but the puck does hit the Montreal Canadiens player's glove. I didn't know you could challenge that. 2, I didn't know that it's not a glove pass if somebody else shoots it into your glove, that there has to be a purposeful, glove motion, I guess, which we're really getting subjective terminology there. Because the puck clearly hits the Canadiens player glove. That wasn't under dispute. But Lindy said it was a bad challenge. Okay, bad challenge. Just get me away from this game. 7-5 against Montreal. All right, so get me away from this game, which means next up for the Sabres is going to be against St. Louis before they go out on the road. So the Sabres play Thursday night, 7:30 puck drop against the St. Louis Blues, who've been an average team so far to start the year. And then they go on a 4-game road trip. They play at Philadelphia, and then they go out west. Sabres after dark next week. But for this week, we've got a home game against the Blues and then a away game against Philadelphia to talk about a little bit later on in the week. So we will expand on Tage Thompson this week, depending on what his injury status is. So we'll keep you updated on that. If you want the quickest possible news on what happens with Tage, sign up for a text club, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We will keep you informed as quickly as possible there. And Samuelson as well. All right. Another loss for the Sabres. Yeah, we'll talk to you coming up. We'll do some power rankings as well, which we did not get to last week. We'll do it this week with some updated standings and whatnot. And we'll talk about Tage, and we'll look ahead to St. Louis all this week. So that's all coming up on the next couple of days here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you want some fantasy hockey tips, be sure to check out Steal and Flip. We've got you covered over on Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Or if you would like a recap of the Bills win over the Colts, Joe Marino's got you covered with Locked On Bills. That'll do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.